You suck at running away. However, the very fact that you clicked on this video means that you want to get better, and you have what it takes. So grab your insta-ready meal, your beverage of choice, and cozy on up, because today, I'm going to learn you a thing or two. We're going to learn some movement fundamentals, some movement techniques, and how to use these handy-dandy little air vents that Valve has so preciously sprinkled around the map in order to rotate and get to where you need to be. As well, we'll cover the concept of hovering and what exactly that even means. It's time to deadlock in. Pause lock. Bet you thought you could escape the pause lock by watching a deadlock video, huh? Well, let me tell you, it is an inescapable reality, okay? And now that I have you here, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the love and support on the channel. It has been tremendous and really inspires me with new ideas for the future. So do stay tuned. Do all the YouTube things below, and I love you. See you in the next one. Let's start with the basics, and not in the way you might think. We're not talking about skills or damage numbers, but rather about a character's weight, movement ability, and class identity. Each hero in Deadlock has their own movement kit. This includes things like the starting number of stamina pips, their base movement speed, their base sprint speed, and which dash bucket they are located in. Heavies like Abrams and Victor are built for stability. They're slower and really excel in controlling space. Heavies rotate slower, so they need to take smarter routes and plan their rotates before a fight happens and not so much after the fact. On the other hand, we have characters like Hayes and Holiday who thrive on being that tempo. They're built to move between lanes, flank, and punish any who dare to go out just a little too far. Moral of the story, if you play Abrams like Hayes, you're bringing a bowling ball to a knife fight. However, if you play Hayes like Abrams, you're just waiting to get swatted out of the way. You must play to your hero and understand their rational identity. Alright, so before we can jump into rotations, we need to make sure that you actually know how to move. The stamina bar is yet another resource that you have to manage in Deadlock. Each one represents a choice: fight, flee, or reposition. If you spam all your stamina in one fight, you're left with only the ability to frog hop back to an objective while getting shot in the back. Not too conducive to staying alive. So before we can talk about where and how to rotate, we must first understand how to maximize those stamina pips. Here we can see the differences up close and personal. One stamina bar is one dash and equals about 12 meters of distance. Still one stamina bar, we have a dash and a slide. This ups our distance to about 20 meters. Now we get to two stamina bars where we utilize the dash jump. This gets you about 25 meters of distance. Up next, if we tack a slide onto that dash jump, a dash jump slide, we bump all the way up to about 35 meters. Up next, if we tack a jump onto the end of that, we get a dash jump slide jump, getting about 40 meters. And finally, if we chain yet another slide, we get a dash jump slide jump slide. This is our maximal distance at about 50 meters for two stamina bars. Every meter matters when you're rotating trying to get to a fight, or even when you're trying to get out and escaping the fight. If you're having trouble timing this, do a dash and press the jump key exactly when your stamina bar flashes blue. Practice this enough and it'll become second nature. Now that's your bread and butter, but Deadlock is full of extra spice. Up next we have wall bounces. These are easily achieved by jumping towards a wall. Once you hit that wall, your character will initiate a slide animation. While this slide is happening, if you press jump yet again, you'll kick off the wall, giving you some extra height, speed, and distance. This is perfect for chaining movement in the middle of a combo or juking a character when you're in the middle of a fight. After this, we have mantle sliding, which can be achieved by mantling in a traditional way of forward and the space key. Then while that mantle animation is occurring, holding down your crouch key. At the end of the mantle animation, you'll immediately initiate a slide, canceling out the reset of speed that you would initially get with the traditional mantle. This gives you an instant reposition tool the moment you hit that mantle, and this can be the difference between your pursuer finding an empty rooftop or you sitting there waiting for the bullet. After this, we get into topics like ledge and corner boosting, and are fantastic additions to our toolkit. These, however, are much more difficult to pull off, and so I recommend sticking with the fundamentals, at least for now. But that's just me, so please, Schmoevement God, do as you will. There are more than enough videos on this topic on this very site. And finally, we have camera control, a subtle but huge aspect to the movement. Your strafe direction and camera angle directly affect the momentum you're taking. Swinging your camera in the direction of your turn while in mid-air gives you some extra distance that you wouldn't have originally gotten by just holding the one key and keeping your camera locked. This is a fantastic addition to outmaneuver enemy fire while in mid-air and give you that little extra distance for the next rooftop or ledge grab. Alright, so you've learned how to move, but now we need to move with purpose. Valve in their infinite wisdom gave us rooftop air vents and teleporters. These are the arterial pathways throughout the cursed apple. Vents are those little rooftop additions that you might be ignoring and are the key to rotating successfully. They are the fastest routes between lanes and allow some unpredictability in your movement when being chased. Let's illustrate. Imagine rotating from the left lane all the way to blue. Here I have a direct comparison of 3 different ways we can go about it. First, we have the traditional one that you're probably utilizing, taking the ground floor and using some movement tech. This can be achieved in about 22 seconds and isn't too bad of a way. Up next, we have the Metro, a direct line between the outer and inside lanes. This, again, utilizing some movement tech, gets you about 20-22 seconds of time. Finally, we have the True Rotate, where we use an air vent along with all our movement tech, and we get to the lane in sub 20 seconds. The first way isn't too bad, the second way slightly safer. However, our third way with the vent achieves both. We get speed and safety through the unpredictability of our aerial movement. While you're airborne, you're usually out of the traditional horizontal sightline. This means fewer ambushes, fewer choked deaths, and more map control. And again, you're not saving a whole lot of time, but these seconds can quickly add up. And Deadlock is a game about those seconds. The other side of the coin, and arguably less utilized, is that of teleporters. No longer are you taking the line all the way back to base and then going out to the other side of the map, but are instead in position and ready to either flank or fight. The key is to be using them proactively. If where you need to be is on the other side of the map, they are the quickest way to get there. That's exactly how you win games and is tempo control at its finest. Now let's put it all together. A good player moves fast, a great player moves with purpose. Rotations aren't about running to or from danger, but should rather be used to create opportunities. Let's say you just lost a fight in jungle. Your partner's dead and the enemy's pushing in. A novice player might also rush in to try and save that dying player, however, yet again, this bleeds tempo. Instead, you need to disengage intelligently. Use those rooftops, vents, and a teleporter if you even need to. The key is to always be doing something. Rather than bleed tempo by jumping into that dying fight, you can instead disengage and keep up with souls per minute, grabbing a bridge buff spawning soon, or reposition for the next fight. When something like this happens or a rotate is needed, think about these questions. Can I vent to a safer angle? Can I create a crossfire for my team? Can I drag enemies out of position? And most importantly, can I take objective in this current position? That's high-level Deadlock, turning defense into map control, panic into tempo. Because again, the truth is you don't need to outgun your enemy, you need to outposition them. Alright, so here's where people mess up. They rotate without thinking. They mess up their movement by sliding into a wall or mistiming the jump. Or God forbid, mess up the wall bounce heavy melee mantle slide into the vent for the bridge buff. Legendary 2025 sentence, by the way. But here's the truth. Rotation is 80% planning where you need to be and 20% execution of getting there. If you don't know where the vents are, how can you rotate smartly? So, practice. Load into that NYC Explore mode, find where the teleporters, rooftop zip lines, and air vents are, and train until you don't even have to think of where you're going. Find the fastest and safest paths for your hero and their movement kit. Every mistake you make here is one less you'll make in an actual game of Deadlock. And remember, panic is your enemy. The moment you panic, your muscle memory dies. Slow your brain, focus the inputs, and keep up that flow. Alright, so now you understand movement on both a micro and macro level, we can get into the real topic, that of hovering. Hovering, as I like to call it, is understanding where your hero should be throughout the mid-game. It's not about consistently running around, but rather floating in the right spaces. Soaking farm, getting XP, and being where you need to be at the right time. These aren't hard rules, but more so a guideline for where a hero and their class identity usually expects them to be. First up, we have carries. These are your soul-hungry characters that usually are fairly weak in that early to mid-game, however explode onto the scene once you inevitably hit that 25-30 minute mark. For those first 20 to 25 minutes, their job is fairly simple. Sit in the sideline. Stay near your walker, catch the waves, and dip into the jungle when you can. And if you can, as a carry, push the wave and get them under their walker, your best bet is to invade their jungle and begin that ramping at an even faster rate. This is optimal hovering for carries and is the fastest way to make sure you're ready for that endgame. Up next we have frontliners and supports. Their job isn't nearly as simple, however is almost more important at this stage in the game. These are characters like Abrams, Kelvin, Dynamo, Paige. They thrive on being in that center and controlling the space on the map. Your job is to keep space and ensure that the enemy team can't invade our jungle, or at least can't do so without some serious harassment. You hover near objectives and protect carries and supports when they're in this nascent period of the game. You can force enemy rotations, bait out fights, and generally brawl while in that mid-game. And doing so from the middle of the map is the best position. This allows you to go to a carry if they need help, or come back and defend that pivotal middle lane. Your mid-game motto as a frontline or support: control tempo, create chaos, and make the map just a little bit smaller for the enemy. And finally we have our catch and chase characters. These are duelists like Calico, Yamato, Pocket, etc. They thrive in the mid-game, living in the space between fights. Think of them like traditional MOBA junglers, except more bloodthirsty. They don't really care about jungle so much as rotating throughout the jungle constantly, always trying to pick off somebody out of position. If the enemy carry is pushing a little too up that side lane, the Yamato or Pocket can dive them and nuke them, resetting their souls per minute and keeping them out of the game for just that much longer. As a catcher character, you want to hover between lanes constantly, using those air vents, the rooftops, and all the movement tech we've talked about. You always want to be where the fight might break out, not where it's already started. This style of hovering puts constant mental pressure on the enemy. They're always going to second guess where they need to be and whether you're right around the corner. And that, ladies and gentlemen, takes us to the end of our video. So yeah, you might suck at rotating, but so does everybody at some point in the learning process. Because rotation isn't something that you just get. There isn't a stat line for rotation under your KDA. It's not just about memorizing those vent paths in the quickest way around the map. It's about that map intuition and understanding where everybody is in the chaos that is Deadlock. You really start to understand when you stop asking yourself where I should be and start intuitively knowing where that next fight is gonna happen, even though it still might be 45 seconds to a minute and a half out. That's what separates someone who plays Deadlock from someone who understands the game of Deadlock. Rotation is rhythm. When you rotate early, your team wins the lane. When you hover correctly, your carry survives that 3-man push. When you start to move with purpose instead of panic, no longer is the map a scary place, but something you are controlling and directly improving. Like I said, it's one of those invisible skills that never has a stat line. You'll never see a map sense under your KD, and it's why the best players sometimes don't have the flashiest numbers. They always seem to just be there first. So take the time to understand your hero's role. Understand that hero's tempo, their best hover zones, and how best you can use their movement kit to rotate. Because once rotating stops becoming an obligation, it becomes a superpower. You'll know exactly when to collapse on the fight. You'll see the flank happening before it even comes through. You'll control fights not with aim, but with presence. So if this video helped you see the game in a bit of a wider view, has you thinking about the next vent path or rooftop that you're going to take, please help out and drop a like and subscribe. As well, check out my previous videos on a lane and mid game and understanding exactly how both of those tick. They help teach you things about managing pressure, priority in lane and mid game, and of course, yet again, timing. Until then, stop feeding, start flowing, and Deadlock in.